What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here today. And today we're bringing you our Georgia Tech preview and prediction. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Check out the description for links to our shop, podcast, website, Patreon page, and our college football roundup channel that we do with the football expert. I'll leave both of the cards for those channels right here. Also, help me reach that goal of 1,000 subscribers by the end of July. We're starting to close in, so I appreciate all of you guys who have been along for the ride and helping us hit our goals throughout our time doing this. But let's go ahead and dive into today's video. So, Georgia Tech, they hired Brent Key on. He was there. He was the interim head coach last year for 8 games. He went 4-4. That was his first year ever as a head coach. They hired him back on, so he'll have his first full season now with the Yellow Jackets. They went 5-7 last year, 4-4 in the ACC. They did have some big wins. They won at North Carolina 21-17, at Pittsburgh 26-21, and they beat Duke in overtime 23-20. But they also had some bad losses: 41-10 against Clemson to open the year, 42-0 against Ole Miss in the third game of the year. They lost to Florida State on the road 41-16. Miami beat them 35-14, and Georgia beat them 37-14. So they had their share of big losses. But I expect Georgia Tech to be a little bit improved this year. They do get the transfer quarterback in, Haynes King, so I think he will help this offense, play a little bit better. I think Georgia Tech's going to have a solid year for, what they've been. I think they're going to improve, but not necessarily that show in the record. They do have a decently favorable schedule. They definitely have some games on there that they can win for sure. So let's go ahead and jump into the schedule. So week 1, they get Louisville. They get Louisville. And I have this game as a loss. I think that they will lose to Louisville. I just think Louisville's a better team than Georgia Tech is. I think that even though Louisville brings in a new head coach, a new quarterback, all this other stuff, the quarterback and the head coach are familiar with each other. Jack Plummer played under Jeff Brom at Purdue, so they're familiar with each other. I think Jeff Brom is a better head coach than Brent Key. I think Louisville just overall has a little bit more talent than this Georgia Tech team does, but I think this could be a closer game. I think it'll be an exciting game to watch, a good way to open up the first official week 1 of college football on that Friday night. And so I think it'll be a fun, interesting matchup, but I do think Louisville will get the win. Then they get South Carolina State at home. I have this game as a win. I think this will be a good game to kind of bounce back from the Louisville game, a game to get some guys some good experience and playing time that wouldn't normally get it, and a game where you can kind of continue to figure out where your guys really fit in, because that's another thing is whenever you bring in – I get Brent Key's been there, but – it's his first time as a head coach. You bring in some transfers and stuff. It takes some actual game to really figure out where they thrive at the best. And I think South Carolina State will be a good game to try and gauge and figure out where they best fit in. And I think Georgia Tech will do that. I see this as an easy win for the Yellow Jackets. Then they go on the road to Ole Miss. I have this game as a loss. I think it'll be somewhat closer than it was last year. I think Georgia Tech will score, if that puts it into perspective of what I'm trying to say. I think Georgia Tech can score this year. I don't think they can win this game. Ole Miss just has too much offense and about an equal defense to Georgia Tech. So, I just think that Ole Miss is just clearly the better team in this game. And, I just don't see Georgia Tech being able to compete for 4 quarters. Then they go on the road to Wake Forest. I have this game as a loss. This is a game, though, I could see Georgia Tech winning. Wake Forest loses a lot, specifically the quarterback and their receivers, but they still have, in my opinion, better talent at most positions than the Yellow Jackets do. I think Mitch Griffis is going to be a pretty good quarterback for Wake Forest. He's a guy who's also been in the system for a while, definitely a lot longer than Haynes King has been in Georgia Tech system. I think Dave Clawson is a better head coach. I think Georgia Tech is just beaten in every aspect of this game. I think physically, coaching, offensively, defensively, special teams, everything. Although like I said, this is a game I could see them winning because Wake Forest defense is so bad. I could see this game as a win for Georgia Tech, and depending on how Griffiths plays. But I expect him to be good, and I expect that defense to be good enough for them to get the win. Then they get Bowling Green at home. This game is a win. I think that Georgia Tech will beat Bowling Green. I don't see Bowling Green as a team that really poses any type of threat to Georgia Tech. I think they win this game pretty handily. Then they go on the road to Miami. I have this game as a loss. But once again, one of these games I could see them winning. If Tyler Van Dyke plays like last year's Tyler Van Dyke, then Georgia Tech will probably win this game, although they did lose last year 35-14. But I feel like Miami is getting better under Cristobal. I think Van Dyke will have a better season, and I don't really see Georgia Tech being able to do much this year. I think it'll be closer than 21, what they lost by last year, but not much, like 14 or 17, I think it'll be. Then they get a bye week. Then they get Boston College at home. I have this game as a win. I think Boston College is probably a bottom 3 team in the ACC. I think Georgia Tech is a little bit better than them. I think Georgia Tech is slightly better coached. I like Brent Key a little bit better than Jeff Hafley. And so I'm giving Georgia Tech the win here, although this to me is I think it's 55-45 in favor of Georgia Tech. Then they get North Carolina at home. This is a game they won last year 21-17 and pulled off a big upset, but I don't see that happening again. I think Drake May and the North Carolina offense will get the job done. But again, one of these games I could see Georgia Tech winning because North Carolina's defense just may be the worst defense of a Power 5 school. It is that bad. And so I could see Georgia Tech winning this game, but I just think they don't have enough talent to compete with North Carolina, specifically offensively. Then they go on the road to Virginia. I have this game as a win. I think they'll beat the Cavaliers. I think Virginia is definitely the worst team in the ACC under Tony Elliott right now. He better get them going soon, within the next 2-3 years max, or he very well may be gone. That's something he's going to have to look at and really start turning around. And I just think Georgia Tech's much better than them. Even though they did lose last year 16-9 to Virginia, I think I would consider that an upset, to be honest. I think Georgia Tech wins this game pretty handily by 10+ points. Then they go on the road to Clemson. I have this game as a loss. I think Georgia Tech's going to get smacked again by Clemson. They have the past few years now. Well, not few years. They've, the last 5-6 years, they've been just absolutely smacked by Clemson. And I see that happening again. I just don't think Georgia Tech has the talent to compete with these top teams like Clemson. These top 10 teams, they just don't have the talent to compete with them. And I just see Clemson absolutely crushing Georgia Tech. Then Georgia Tech gets Syracuse at home. I have this game as a loss. I think Dino Babers and the Syracuse Orange are at a little bit of a better spot than Georgia Tech. I think they're a team that can go 7-5, maybe 8-4, but that to me is a little bit pushing it. Whereas Georgia Tech's more of a team I see at 4-8, 5-7, somewhere around there. And so I have Georgia Tech losing this game. I just like Garrett Schrader and that Syracuse team a lot better than this Georgia Tech team. I think they are better coached, and I think they will beat Georgia Tech. Then they get Georgia, and they will lose this game. They will get crushed. They lost 37-14 last year, so pretty impressive. They even scored 14 points last year. But they're going to get absolutely crushed and demolished by by Georgia. So I think it's, a loss. I think it's a guaranteed loss for Georgia Tech, to be honest, regardless of what happens with Georgia this year. But that wraps up today's video. So I have Georgia Tech going 4-8 overall. I have them winning 2 ACC games, so going 2-6 in the ACC. Probably finishing somewhere like I'm trying to think how many teams are there, and then count through. Probably have them finish somewhere, 11 through 14 is where I think they'll finish, somewhere down through there. I don't think Georgia Tech's going to have that great of a year, but I do think they are in a better spot under Brent Key than they were under Jeff Collins. I still don't think Brent Key's the guy to get them to where Paul Johnson had them, but it's a start in the right direction. But that wraps up today's video. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers. I appreciate all you guys watching, and I'll see you